Let us begin. Let us begin. Okay, everyone, it's pretty cool to be here. And what I want to start and chat with everybody here today is about business risk, understanding business risk. I'm going to do a couple of things. This week has been really interesting for me on a lot of levels. And we've been having this opportunity that we have to get together here and talk about our plans, talk about what we're doing, talk about our goals, and present information that will be beneficial to the folks in the team. This is some really cool stuff. And I was thinking about this for a few days, wondering what I was going to focus on, what I was going to present for the benefit of all of our members in TXNL. And I'm going to try and cover a number of areas. I'm going to start with some interesting facts. One of these facts is that a major provider of motherboards and computing peripherals was breached with ransomware a few weeks back. And not only, normally when there's a breach, the company loses data potentially, and customers of that company are usually impacted because that's the data they have laying around. Well, in this case, it's partners that also got hit. So this company has significant partners. We're talking AMD and Intel. And this company now, because of that breach, confidential info from these other two companies was also breached. And we know it because the bad guys have been showing some of it on the dark web. Okay. This sets a trend, and I'm going to get into, I'm bringing this up now to kind of give you a taste of some of the craziness I've been looking at this week and what it means for us. The other thing that's been going on, there have been some crazy things in cryptocurrency land. And cryptocurrency has a lot of overlap with cybersecurity, right? A lot of overlap with cybersecurity. And so I look at those trends, not just from a financial standpoint, but because of the implications to security and privacy. And there was a breach a few weeks ago where someone exploited a weakness that he found in one of the platforms that's doing cryptocurrency and stole some money and is negotiating giving it back. And let me tell you, there are so many things that are sketchy about that whole interchange. The fallout is yet to be seen. But this is real life. This is stuff that's happening that will have an impact on us. It has an impact on whether or not various cryptocurrencies will be seen as stable or safe. It has an impact on what things will cost when large entities are breached, or at least confidential data from those entities are breached, what impact it has on the business to business community. So we're going to talk about business risk because everyone has it. Your business risk, the risks to your business may not be as substantial as the risks to Gigabyte's business was, or the risk to the cryptocurrency folks, but you have business risk. You have risk even if you haven't started up your business. If you're an employee, you also have risk, right? One of the risks that I try to tell people about as an employee that you have to understand, as a consultant, sure, technically, I don't have as stable an employment situation as an employee. But the stability that employees face exists right up until it stops existing. The moment that a company decides they're going to merge, or that they're going to do some layoffs, or that they didn't hit certain quarters numbers, All that stability goes to the wind. And the disadvantage that the employee has is he was probably not actively looking for other positions, and the employer probably represents 100% or 90+% of his income potential. That is difficult. If I lose a customer, even my primary customer, my income is not going to zero. It might be a little bit stressful to make adjustments, but my income is not going to zero. My customers all know that I'm looking for other customers all the time. There's no stigma associated with that. So as an employee, you have business risk. You have risk that pertains to your family. You have cybersecurity risk. We live in an environment, we live at a time, if you have a smartphone, you have cybersecurity risk. And you have to understand where your data is, who's using it, who has access to it, and what kinds of things can happen with it. You need to understand that. You can't delegate that understanding or that risk management to someone else. You have to know about it. You have to deal with it. If you refuse to deal with it, you will find yourself dealing with identity theft situations that will be painful, and you will find yourself doing that multiple times. You have personal risk. The personal risk spans a lot of things pertaining to your family, things pertaining to income and income opportunity, things pertaining to adventures that you want to get involved in, partnerships, education, any activities, any things that you try to engage in. There's a certain amount of risk, whether you'll be successful, whether you have enough resources. You have to be willing to evaluate that risk accurately and make good decisions based on it. And then there are leadership goals. That's another area that we want to cover. Okay, leadership goals. Now, I'm going to make an appeal. I made an appeal in the little presentation that I did before, and I'm going to say some stuff about that presentation, that little promo. Real-time video is not my thing, right? It's just, I'm a very methodical, analytical person, and real-time video requires too much of my attention. If you put me on real-time video, right? If you record me, if you sit down and interview me, I'll be fine for the most part because I won't be thinking about the mechanics of the video. But if I have to manage the video, if I've got to manage the other stuff, then my brain is in 4 or 5 places and I'm stepping on each other. After I did the video last night, I looked at all of the outtakes for crazy stuff that I did, and it was humorous. It was really humorous hearing myself botching things. I came to one part where I said, Brainwave Consulting Company, one-stop shop for, and then I couldn't remember what I was supposed to say. And I said like cybersecurity like 4 times, and I just had to laugh. It was funny. But I know that that's not my lane, and that's okay. And the reason it's okay is because, I have to take a little extra time to do things that are not in my lane. And people in the TXNL network, there are things that that are in your lane, and there are things that that are not specifically your lane items, right? And it's important that you not be afraid of the things that are not in your lane. Partner with someone, work with someone, ask someone for assistance. Be comfortable being slower at it than someone else might be, right? It's important for us to know what our lane is, but it's important for us to take stretch opportunities when they come to us. You can't outsource everything, and you should not outsource everything. The marketplace commonly tries to convince you that you should outsource everything that's not core. But if you've been around us for any amount of time, if you've been working on your own for any amount of time, you'll realize that there are a lot more things that should be core or near core, or at least should be considered that way, than people think. And if you outsource everything on the grounds that it's not the thing that you do, you're going to find yourself worse off for that. Okay? So it's very important that you understand these are the things that I am stellar in, and these are the things that I'm average in. I mean, think about it from a sports perspective. Imagine a basketball player deciding, well, I can shoot free throws like nobody's business. I'm a percent plus free throw shooter, but I'm not so good at ball handling and, not so good at rebounds. So I'm not going to do anything until it's time to shoot free throws. How would they ever get a chance to shoot free throws if they didn't do other things? And how would they ever grow if they didn't improve their ability to do some of those other things to where it makes sense for them to be on the court at an appropriate time to leverage their strength? Okay, that's something that you have to understand, that put yourself in a position to leverage your strength. I want to make an appeal to everyone. We have been working together. This is our 15th year anniversary. We have been doing things together and attempting to do a number of things together. And there have been a lot of people who want to start businesses or have businesses that they sort of started, but aren't really pushing because, there's the risk of dropping your present employer. You don't have time, any number of things that are valid. I'm not trying to mock anybody for the choices that they need to make. You know your situations. What I am saying, though, is for the most part, and speaking for myself, I've taken a hands-off approach to trying to push people to do things, right? Unless I know you enough that I know all your business and can say, hey, come on, you could do this, or let me help you do that. I haven't done that because I don't want to downplay anybody's situation, and I don't want to make people feel as though I think I understand their lane better than they do. But I do want to encourage you, putting on my ministerial hat for a minute. Sometimes we have to encourage people to take steps, putting on my mentor hat, ministerial hat, a lot of hats I have that require us to kind of push someone, help them, and tell them you can do this, and I'll help you do the parts that are harder, right? You can do this. You should take the next step. We live in an interesting time. I said that a little bit in the promo, but there are a lot of societal changes that are coming. And the things that we thought were reasonable to do in 2019 are probably not reasonable anymore, or their priorities need to shift, or the degree to which they are reasonable needs to be readjusted, or at least reconsidered. And so now is the time for more people to be running more of their own show. I'm not here to tell you that working for yourself is a panacea. It's not. Okay, but working for someone else isn't either. And I have more flexibility than I did working for other people. And all the people that I speak to doing this also indicate that they have more flexibility. So it's important for us to take advantage of that and to help everyone else realize their potential. Because listen, if I can help you move further ahead and realize the goal that you have, I get a benefit, you get a benefit, right? And then you're in a position to help someone else who needs both of us to help them. And then we're in a position to help other people, and it just grows from there. We really need to try and take advantage of that. Okay, so when you talk about business risk, we're talking about sales and marketing. We're talking about cash flow, right? Accounts receivables, overall financing. We're talking about getting and keeping customers. These are all risks that you need to have, or risks that you will have in business. We're talking about ramping up operations, right? You may be running your business at a certain level and you need to ramp up. Or people may be pushing you to ramp up, but you are comfortable with where your business is. You need to know that. You need to understand that. Getting and keeping staff, especially now in the COVID time period. These are things that we can help you with. Here's something else I want to say. My specialty is primarily in the realm of cybersecurity, IT operations, and business strategy. And the reason why I say business strategy, even though I don't promote it that much, is, or at least I don't promote it as a means of getting customers. Business strategy, I have worked very closely with organizations as an employee, as a consultant, because when you are managing their cybersecurity and their IT operations, you know a lot about their business. You have to in order to do that job properly. There's no way that I can have only a cursory view of what someone does and be all intricate in their technology. Can't do it. So I have to know really, what are you doing? Where are you going? How's this work? What are your risks? What are your objectives? Who are your competitors? And once I understand that, because I've had experience there, I can guide them in ways that pertain to better business choices, right? I'm not trying to tell a CEO that I know their job better than them, but I know things that they need to know about because I see it from the technology side, from the cybersecurity side, from the compliance side. So I can help people that way. And when I help people that way, it makes it makes all their other choices better. Okay, makes all of their other choices better. And so this is something that we definitely want to be able to do, right? Definitely want to be able to do, is help you from a business perspective. There are many of us within TXNL and Better Me Inc. who are able to do that because this is what we do as part of our business operations. Cybersecurity. Cybersecurity risk is important because, and it's getting more and more prevalent, right? So I'm going to say this. You're going to hear about ransomware until you're sick of hearing about ransomware. 2021 is going to be the year of ransomware until 2022, which will also become the year of ransomware. This problem is not going away in the short term. And it's not going away because people are not taking it seriously. It's not going away because it's not easy to fix, right? If you think about ransomware in an overall sense, ransomware is me getting into your environment, usually through social engineering, right? Tricking somebody to cough up something or to click on something. So I'm going to trick your folks to get into your environment and then take advantage of your network for my benefit to run software on it that disables your access to it until you pay me money. You have to imagine that that's not easy to fix because there are two places that you need to fix. You need to get the people straightened out, and you need to get the people straightened out, and you need to get your network straightened out. Okay, these are not things that are going to happen overnight, especially for mid-sized to larger organizations. So you can expect that we're going to have a good 18 months of this chaos continuing until sufficient changes are made. Maybe some legislative things happen, although that's sketchy because it's cross-country that we're dealing with here, and some of it is state actors or sanctioned by state actors. And when we say state actors, what we mean is other governments, adversarial governments, are either directly doing these things or kind of turning a blind eye while people within their countries are doing them to their advantage, right? So state actors would involve, especially for this kind of stuff, Russia, China, North Korea, and Iran. Those would be the biggest ones, but they're not the only ones. Okay. Security, people don't take security seriously until they're hit. And unfortunately, people don't take cyber health security the way they don't take physical health security properly, right? So physical health, people don't pay as much attention to it as you would expect. So it's not surprising that cyber health, they don't pay that much attention to until they're near going out of business or there's significant financial pain. Okay. You should expect that cyber security insurance is going to increase in cost because they've been hitting those guys up and they've been paying out too much. And as a business model, it is not good for the insurance companies. So they're going to fix that problem. And it's going to start being a very costly problem for companies. So cybersecurity risk exists, and it exists for you as a person, an individual. It exists for you as a customer of other people. It exists for you as a business owner or employee, okay? And it exists for you if you're in a B2B scenario, business to business scenario. It's going to exist for you there. So you're going to have it coming and going, and it exists for you through the government because governments are going to get breached, and therefore records that you have with the government or with government related agencies, DMV, some are privatized, some are not. All of those kinds of things, you're going to be experiencing it. So you need to pay attention to cybersecurity risk for yourself, or it's going to be really painful. If you think it's bad for businesses, just understand what happens when your information gets stolen financially, and all of a sudden you can't get access to credit because the implication is that something negative was done to your credit, and you have to unravel the identity theft. Not a good place. Okay. Personal risk. Personal risk is you deciding what to do about your career or business. Jumping in, taking the plunge, engaged in community service or ministry or whatever it is you decide to do, making that decision, changing your family situation, marriage or not marriage, transitioning to self-employment, etc. Those are things that you're going to have to decide. And you can talk to us about those things because those things are part of all of the risk that we address, right? Personal risk is associated with business risk, especially for a small business, right? If you're a small business owner, you think your personal risk isn't part of that? Why do you think as a small business owner, when banks and financial institutions are going to loan you money, they ask you about your credit? Because your personal risk is the business's risk. They understand that. And so you have to understand that. Now, leadership. I want to make an interesting point here on leadership. Networking versus project collaboration. One of the discussions I had this week spoke about the fact that we look at networking, professional networking, where we get together and we say, hey, I do this. What is it you do? Let's try and help each other out. And many people that I know and have spoken to over the years indicate that, yeah, you do see some transactions. You do see some benefit from that. You do know people. And sometimes long term, it really plays out because, an opportunity that you get 5 years down the road, you're like, oh, yeah, there was this guy. I knew he was awesome developer. Let me reach out, this, that, the other. But in a lot of cases, I don't see immediate return on investment for the networking effort. And I think that we need to start looking at these networking efforts differently. And the reason why I believe that networking efforts have problems is because a networking effort is essentially a chaotic job fair. Everyone in that networking meeting is trying to hook up with everyone else in that networking meeting for an opportunity for work, and everyone is doing it. So I'm there and I'm like, hey, if you guys need any security, this is what I do. And the other person's like, yeah, but I'm trying to get another deal to do this thing. And everybody is basically saying to everybody else, when my project comes in, then I'll be in a position to hook up with one of you guys or two of you guys to do your piece, right? So with networking, if you go into networking the way that I have taken to look at LinkedIn as an example, on LinkedIn, I try to connect with people who look cool or seem to be doing cool things for nothing in the short term. I just look at them as, hey, this is a person that is interesting. I look at their responses on things. This is an intelligent person. I can learn from the things that they're doing. I would like to know them. And then we'll see where it goes when it gets to going there, right? But nothing short term, hey, I need a project. I need another business lead. I don't look at LinkedIn for that because for me, and for many people I know, not everyone, I know people making money that way or hooking up and getting jobs that way. But for me, I have found it more prudent to engage in relationship building through networking and not attempt to do job building through networking. On the flip side of that is project collaboration. So now what we're talking about is looking at people who are working on something. So you're looking at in two different ways. You're either saying, I have a project that I am going to either secure or have just secured, and I need to speak to people who can help me with these specific roles. Okay. And so that's one way. Or you say, look, let me speak to people who have projects that are ongoing, and I'm going to lend my effort to that project. Okay. By looking for project collaboration, you put yourself in a much better situation to build a mutually beneficial scenario, right? If you look at the networking for that, everybody's coming to that table hungry, and everybody's coming saying, hey, anybody got bread, right? But if you come and say, hey, listen, if you come like a potluck and you say, hey, I've got some bread, who has the peanut butter? Who has the Swiss cheese? Who has something else? And you come bringing something, willing to help somebody who's missing a part, or you have that work and willing to pick up other people who are willing to be picked up it's going to be better for you. And I think that that's one of the goals that I have personally this year, meaning I'm going to strive not just for projects that I can do, but projects that I would need help doing. And I'm going to get them. And then I'm going to say, hey, this is the gap that I have, and I need help in this gap, right? And we can then leverage our networks in that way. We can leverage our teams much more effectively that way, and it will feel less chaotic, less like we're just spinning our wheels and doing the same thing and getting the same result, right? Bring leadership to the table. Volunteer for something. Try to push yourself to get something going. Try to push someone, and I'm using the word push, and I do not mean it in an offensive way. I don't mean that you should be oblivious to the sign that someone says, no, 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 not right now, right? I'm not saying that. But I do think push is important, because sometimes we're very, hey, would you like to do such and such? Nah, okay, right? And no, maybe you needed to say it. Really? Are you sure you don't want to do that? Because I'll help you. And then the person might say, well, okay, fine, let's do that. Like, we need to be a little bit persistent. We need to show that we do have confidence in the other person. If you see somebody who's near to taking that step, help them. Not just encourage them, but help them. Be prepared to say, okay, I think you can make it, and I'll help you to make it. Encourage them to do it, right? Help people move towards sustainability. Find people who are working but need assistance to make it really play out. Like, they have just changed, they're working for themselves, but they're no better off because they're just tired all the time, because it's still too much for them what they're trying to do. Help them towards sustainability, right? The distinction I want to make, even though I use the term push, is pushing good, bullying not good, right? We don't want to bully people. We want to be sensitive to the responses we're getting back. We want to be encouraging. We want to give people some space, right? We want to give people their sovereign ability to choose for themselves. We can encourage, we can plead, we can appeal, right? We can do all of the things other than drag, bully, lasso. You can't do those things. And pushing does sound bad, but you can poke, right? And it's important. I want us to look at that, and I want us to feel as though we've got each other's backs. Let me give you a story. I had a colleague of mine. I hired a guy as a consultant when I was an employee at one point, and I hired a guy as a consultant, and he was awesome. He could crank out work. His mindset was a little bit weird, because he felt like everybody should be doing what he was doing. And I'm like, well, I hired you because they weren't doing what you're doing. And so you just need to cover the bases that I need. And he would get himself into problems and compare himself. And I kept reminding him, you are a consultant. If you create too much friction, you know who goes? Not any of the employees, the consultant goes, right? That's how it's going to play out, right? And I tried to help him. There were a lot of areas where he would get it, and a lot of areas where he wouldn't get it. I tried coaching him, tried mentoring him. My right-hand man did as well. And we tried a lot of things with him. And overall, he did well, but there was all of this friction. And I finally left that organization. He was there for a little while, and he ran into problems because of his personality and his perspective on things. Well, he ended up in a new place. And after about 4 months there, he calls me and he says, Andrew, I understand what you and my other friend were telling him. He says, I get it. I finally get it. He says, listen to what happened. I got into this situation, and this is how I played it, and this is what I said, and it totally backfired. And right now, he says, I don't know if I'm going to be able to make it through here. And I said, okay, so describe the situation. And he described it. And I said, well, here's how you're going to have to play it. This is what you're going to have to do. Here's how you're going to have to say, you're going to take a beating, but you're going to have to apologize, and you're going to have to play it low key. And you're just going to have to let people, they're going to be eyeing you for a good 30, 60 days. And you're just going to have to stay under the radar during that time. And this is how you're going to need to try and play it out and see how it works. And he says, okay. And he followed all the instructions. And he lasted there. He stayed another year and a half, but then he decided that wasn't really the place for him because of a number of things. And he made another move. But this time he implemented the things that he had learned from us and that he had seen play out. He didn't get it until he was all alone and realized that we weren't just blowing smoke, that we weren't just saying what we were saying, that we weren't just stuck in the way we viewed things. He realized that what we were saying was true on a broad scale. And he recognized and came back to us and was willing to ask for advice and was willing to accept it. You need to look at that and say, there are people that you may have tried to push at a particular time. You've poked them. You've given them rope. You've said, hey, anytime, my door is always open. You know, all of the different terms that we use, the phrases we use to try and get people to a place where they will be willing to reach out to us. And maybe they haven't taken advantage of it. Maybe they don't get it yet. Maybe maybe the pressure isn't on them the way that it should be or could be, and so they don't get it yet. Okay, I had a guy that was working for me, and when I came to that place, I was told that this guy, you know, he kind of did what he wanted. He worked. He had a side gig at our job. He had a side gig. The senior team knew about it, and nobody had done anything about it. I was like, okay. So I spoke to him and I said, listen, I know you got this side thing, but make sure it doesn't interfere with the stuff I need from you. He's like, oh, no, it won't. This, that, the other. Okay. He's going about his business. He's a little bit slow. He's doing all this other stuff. I keep talking to him. I'm like, hey, you need to pick it up. You need to do this. You need to do that. I hire some additional folks. Those folks are moving a lot better than he is. I'm like, hey, your numbers aren't stacking up to other people. Finally, because he was really creating problems, I went to our management team and everything, and I took notes on everything. I had him written up and all this kind of stuff. And I took it to them and said, hey, I can't continue to have him on the team. As long as he's here, he's dragging the whole team down, and I can't get the things done that need to be done for the organization. And they're like, oh, give him a chance, give him a this. I'm like, he's had chances. He's had chances before I got here. I tried. They kind of stalled me. I'm like, okay, whatever. So I let it drop. I worked around him as much as I could. I did what I needed to do. One day, he does something stupid, and it creates a problem. And my boss comes to me and says, you need to get rid of him. And I'm like, oh, no. That's not how that works. I said, no. I said, y'all want that? You want him gone? You do it. Your fingerprints, not mine. I said, when I was ready to have him gone and I had all the ducks lined up and I had everything in a row, y'all didn't want to pull the trigger. No. You want that trigger pulled? You go do all that work. Or you just exercise your authority. You got enough authority. We're in an at-will state. Do it. But my fingerprints will not be on it. And they pushed me a little bit, and I'm like, no. Because when I wanted to do it and everything was nice and proper, y'all wouldn't do it. So y'all live with it now. This is what I was talking about. So I was there for some more time, and I switched roles, right? Ended up switching roles. So he wasn't reporting to me anymore. And I'm going about my business. One day, he knocks on my office. Can I speak to you? I said, sure. He comes in, and he says to me, he says, I messed up. I said, how? Such and such happened, and now this big thing has happened, and everybody's losing their mind. So I said, okay, here's what you need to do. Again, guided him. He came to me. I guided him, and I told him what he needed to do, and you know what he had to do to stay under the radar, XYZ, and he left. A couple of days later, still within the time frame of this incident, I'm having a conversation with somebody, and they told me he's on his last leg. If that guy so much as sneezes wrong in the next 90 days, he's out of here. So I didn't say who said it, but I came back. When I got back to my office, I called him, and I said, I just need to let you know something. I said, I worked with you for a long time. Well, I told him what I hadn't told him before. I said, because of how you used to behave and all the stuff and what you weren't putting up with, I said, I tried to get rid of you and they wouldn't do it. And his eyes got wide. I said, they wouldn't do it. And so I let you be here and you got to do whatever you wanted. I said, but you see that little mess up you made? They are all over it. If you so much as sneeze wrong, you're going to be done. And it took that statement, because once I was finished with them, I was just like, oh, on your way. It took that statement for him to finally realize, like all the talking and all the sitting down and all the coaching and all the everything that was done to help this guy understand, you need to get it together. He didn't get. But when I told him, dude, I was going to get rid of you, and they stopped it, but now they're mad for themselves, so your life is in danger. He finally got it. And he totally changed in a way that surprised me, because I figured by now he's done. He totally changed. He began, I don't know what he did with his job because he never like communicated that to me. I don't know what he was doing with his side gig, but he totally became conscientious, hard worker, on top of everything, I's dotted, T's crossed. And he kept, he would come to me for advice about things before things got out of hand. I was surprised. I was honestly surprised. And that helped me realize, like I said, you never understand for sure exactly what buttons to push that will get people over the hump. That's why I'm always impressed by coaches like a Phil Jackson, or, and I'm speaking basketball, but there are different coaches. You'll see coaches in each of the major sports who understand how to deal with the psychology of people, because people are different, have different motivations, have different capabilities, have different points where they can be moved to, or where they'll fight back, or where they'll just collapse and curl up in a fetal position. You have to understand that to get the best out of your team. You have to understand that to get the best out of yourself. You need to understand that. You need to know, right? We're talking about self-care. Leadership and self-care are not opposite ends of the spectrum. Your leadership is not strong because you understand that your employees or your staff or other people have self-care needs. Your leadership is strong if you understand that you have self-care needs too. You have to understand what your motivations are and how you operate. Because if you don't understand that, if you don't get that, you're not going to be fit to help anybody else. You're not going to be in a position. You're not going to even have the proper empathy. If you don't understand certain things about yourself, you're not going to be empathetic about those things in other people, right? You're going to have a hard time understanding that. It's when people go through experiences that are difficult that they begin to understand difficulties faced by other people. When everything is easy for you, you have no idea that other people are struggling at things that you consider no-brainers. But when you find an area that you struggle in, then is when you begin to realize that other people are not simply incompetent if they don't capture everything or understand everything intuitively. They might have strengths that are in a certain area, not in a different area. And that's why teams are so effective, because you put together people's strengths to magnify them and you counterbalance weaknesses. Okay? So your leadership, what we want to do is create working environment scenarios where we're working together. Listen, when you come into a team situation, don't be ashamed of the skills you have. Don't size yourself up against the people that are around you. We shouldn't do that in TXNL. We shouldn't do that outside. Okay? Don't be ashamed of the skills that you have. Don't be ashamed of skills that you lack. If the lacking of it is not good, then get some education, get some training, do something to fix it. But don't simply be shamed and do nothing. Don't hide because of it. I had the privilege for much of my technical career. I'm not going to say I was the smartest person in the room, because that wouldn't be true, and I don't even like the connotation, but I was very proficient technically in the areas that I specialized in, right? And I was somewhat of a generalist, so I had a lot of areas that I was very good at, okay, and could contribute confidently in. But in a lot of places where I worked, there was somebody who was smarter than me in certain areas, right? What was fun was when I first became a manager, I was, for the most part, better than much of my team. And in fact, that complicated things for me with management, because I would look at things like, why aren't they getting this? And why aren't they doing things this way? And I could do this faster. And I had to learn that that's not how you look at it. And I had to learn that that's not how you approach it. And they're not going to get better if you're just berating them all the time about, I can do that twice as fast. Like, why are you taking so long? Right? And I had to learn those things. And when I learned them and began to see it that way, when I got to the place where my manager would say, how long is your team going to take to do something? And I'd say, oh, we'll be finished with that in 2 weeks. And he's like, why is it taking 2 weeks? I'm like, well, are we calculating it in Andrew time, or are we calculating it in Andrew's team time? Because those are two different numbers. Like, if you want me to do it, sure, I can do it in less than 2 weeks. But are you sure that's a proper use of my skills? And once we had that conversation a few times, then he got it, he got to the place where he understood, right, individual contributor speed is different from manager speed. And I had to learn that. And I got to the place where I've managed teams where some of the folks were much better than me in some of the areas. Okay. My skill at that point wasn't simply in the technical, in the how you do it. It was knowing what should be done. Right. It's like knowing, okay, I need this from my database guy. I need this from the networking guy. I need that from the developer. And here's how we're going to all put it together, right? That was a skill they didn't have. I could see the whole picture, and I could understand the picture, and I could pull them in so as to get the right answers from them. Here's what we're trying to do. Let me whiteboard it, and you guys explain to me what is wrong about my assumptions, right? And so they grew because they got to see this bigger picture, and I grew because I got more technical proficiency in each of their areas. And so when I go to speak on behalf of our team, I'm speaking more intelligently than I would have spoken without collaborating with my team. So don't be ashamed of your current skill set. Leverage your current skill set. What's strong, be strong in. Where it's weak, find ways to shore it up. Partner with other people, right? It's not necessary for you to just fill in the gaps on day one. Partner with other people who have those strengths, work together with them. That will help your area grow. Don't compare yourself with other people. And I say that, don't compare yourself in a destructive way with other people, right? If you're going to compare with other people, then look at people who have skills that you want to gain in and partner with them, work with them, learn from them. Right? Take opportunities to mentor or be mentored. Fine. But understand that what you bring to the table, and don't worry if someone else also brings some of those same things to the table. You don't have to compete with everyone you run into. Right? You don't have to compete with everyone you run into. Don't start from a position of competition. Don't think that they're competing with you. Some people will be, because they have the same problem we're discussing here, and no one has told them not to do that. Okay, but you don't come from that position. If someone has those skills, and partner with them, learn from them. One of the things my father told me that was really, really awesome, and I'm glad that he gave me that advice. He says, whenever someone comes to you and says, hey, do you know such and such? And they're asking you because they're about to say something. If you do know it, don't say, oh, yeah, I know that. Always either say, well, tell me what you have to say, or find some way to allow them to speak. Because he says, if they know it, if you know what they know, right? If they tell you what you already know, it will reinforce what you know. If they tell you something that you didn't already know, now you know more. And you wouldn't have known that if you just shut down everybody with, yeah, I know that. Oh, yeah, I'm familiar with that, right? Don't be quick to say that. You should know what your lane is and be willing to collaborate outside of it. And depending on the work, collaborate inside of it too, right? You might have a lane, but not have enough hands to do it. So collaborate inside too, but definitely know your lane, know what value you're going to add, and collaborate outside of it. You may have a scenario where you're the best person in it with skill A, but the second best person with skill B. Okay. And someone else is second in that skill, but fifth in another area. So you might take the second slot. You might let them lead the charge on the thing that would normally be considered your primary skill, because you're still better than them in the secondary skill and can contribute better there. right? So yeah, they're second best here, but you're also second best in the second thing, whereas they're like fifth best in that other thing. So now you have to understand how to put it together for the benefit of that project. Contribute and grow. And most of all, understand your intangibles. There are things that each of us bring to the table that you have to take some introspection, you have to talk to other people. There are things that we bring to the table that you don't necessarily put on a resume, that you don't necessarily hype in a meeting. One of my intangibles, and this comes from growing up with many different cultures. I have the ability to understand people with different dialects, strong dialects, different backgrounds. You know, I grew up, my parents are from the Caribbean. I was born in the United Kingdom. I've lived the vast majority of my life in the United States. I spent time in the armed forces with a lot of people from a lot of different places. I grew up in schools and churches that were multicultural. So I know and I'm familiar with a lot of different people from a lot of different parts of the world. And when they speak about things, I catch idioms and I catch inflections and I catch different things better than other people that I'm with many times. So a lot of times when my team is talking to another team and someone says something and I immediately recognize, hold on, I heard what you said, but everyone else over here seems like they caught it differently. I'll restate it. I'll say, hold on, I think that what was said was such and such. And I can diffuse a lot of scenarios that way, right? That's an intangible. I don't put that on that falls under good communication, right? Skills. You don't put can decipher can decipher diverse idioms. It's not something that shows up in your stat sheet. It's not something that shows up in your scouting report necessarily, but it's something that you know that you contribute. Be that person, right? Be the person. Know what your intangibles are and how you can contribute. Don't compete to contribute, right? I like to talk, but there are times where I deliberately won't talk because I don't like the impression of dominating every conversation. And so sometimes I'll stay out and people are like, hey, I haven't heard anything from you. And I'm like, okay, that's good. The fact that you noticed that you didn't, that was successful, right? Because I don't always want to dominate that conversation. I don't always want to be on top of that. And I do know there are strategic times to dominate conversations and understand if you're doing something that's risky. For instance, one of the things that I told my team, and I say my team, but I've told teams this over the years. If you know you're a kind of person who likes to have certain things work a certain way, but you also want to be collaborative, don't be collaborative in the places where you don't have any flexibility. Don't do it. Okay. So when I would present a plan, when I would come to a team and say, okay, listen, we're going to work on this plan together. If I say we're going to work on this plan together, whatever parts they come up with that I haven't already come up with is fair game for the plan. I can't say, oh, no, I want to reserve that. I can't say that retroactively. So what I would do whenever I'm putting together a plan that I know I'm going to have areas in that plan that are hard and fast for me, I put a skeleton plan together. Here's a skeleton plan. Whatever's on the skeleton, you can branch from there, but the skeleton is what it is, right? When I work with the team, same thing I say. Hey, guys, here's a project I'm giving you. I need you guys to build me a virtual server that does blah, blah, blah. These 4 criteria you must have. All the rest is up to you. And I tell people that up front. This way, they're not nervous about what they can do and what I might shoot down. And I know that they're going to honor the things that I say. And if I make a mistake, for instance, there have been times where I really had 5 things that I needed to keep in control. And I told them 4, and they come back and they're like, oh, and we painted it purple. And I'm like, ugh. And I'll tell them, you know what? My bad, because I did not tell you to leave it silver. So I'm just going to have to eat that one, right? Because I like to be consistent. You have to understand your intangibles. Your intangibles are not necessarily going to be the same as mine, but understand them. Because if you know how you operate, if you know how you like to operate, you will know how best to collaborate with other people in a frictionless way. and you will be able to help them grow and give yourself opportunities to grow. This is vital for teamwork. This is vital whether you're remaining an employee, whether you're operating as a consultant, whether you're operating as a subcontractor or as a primary contractor. It doesn't matter, right? Prime contractor, doesn't matter. You have to understand what your intangibles are, how you're going to work, and you have to be confident about who you are. And if other people look down on you and aren't able to leverage your skills, that's on them. That's their loss, right? You don't necessarily have to take your ball and go home. It might be prudent to just stand by. It all depends on the circumstance. I'm not trying to make a hard and fast rule for that one, but don't allow other people to dictate your capabilities. Don't be oblivious to other people's observations about you, right? Don't feel like, well, I know who I am, so it doesn't matter what you think. Okay. If you're driving down a road and there are a lot of headlights in your direction, maybe you're going the wrong way. It's possible. You might want to consider that as an option. So you have to understand that, and you have to pay attention to that. But let's work together. That's my plan for the rest of this year and into next. Let's look for opportunities to collaborate. Let's look for projects to work together on. If you have a project that you need help on, or you're like, hey, I want to be able to elevate my business in a certain way, but I can't do it unless I can get this kind of assistance, let's talk. So let's talk to people in the network. Let's be prepared. Let's try and ensure that at least one person in that conversation is offering an opportunity to someone else. If everybody's coming with their hand out, then it's going to be much harder to get something moving. But if people are looking for opportunities to pull in people they know, things will grow from that. And it doesn't have to be permanent. We're not talking about lifetime partnerships here, right? We're not talking about that. We're saying, hey, you've got this project. I have a project where I need to roll out a dozen laptops, and I need to do it in a short period of time. Is anybody willing to help that? Can somebody do that? Can somebody do that on the ground? I'm going to be doing this for another state, and I'm in this state, but maybe I'm doing that in New York. Can I reach out to someone who's in New York on the ground who can do that piece for me and deliver them, so I don't even have to deal with the travel time? And we work together in that way. And we find ways to help each other grow, right? We need to understand risk, and risk has to be evaluated on a regular basis, because when you understand risk, you will understand how to mitigate it. And by the way, should have said this at the beginning, but I think I'll say it now. The most important thing you will ever need to understand about risk, the most important thing, no matter what kind of risk it is, the primary objective that you have when it comes to risk is not merely managing risk, because that's a nebulous term. It is mitigating risk. What does that mean? Your risk, you cannot reduce risk to zero. Let's take the act of driving. You get into a car and you're going to travel from point A to point B. It's 10 or 20 miles away. You could get into an accident. You could have mechanical problems. You could encounter other kinds of issues. Your goal is not to reduce risk to zero before you get in the car or before you pull off, because that's not realistic. Your goal is to reduce risk reasonably. It is to say, do I have enough gas in the car so that I'm not likely to run out? Have I performed maintenance on this car on some sort of a regular basis so it's not likely to just collapse when I turn the ignition, right? Does this car have suitable airbags? Is my seatbelt on? Am I paying attention to the speed limit? Am I traveling at a time that's more, better or worse? Rush hour, not rush hour? Am I taking paths that are sillier? Am I going in places that I don't know of? Do I have maps? You evaluate your situation and you reduce as much risk as you can. You accept risk that it is reasonable to accept, understanding what that means to you, right? Meaning, wow, I got to get somewhere, but it's only 5 miles away and I'm at a quarter tank gas. I'm going to get there and back because I don't have enough time and I'll get gas on the way back, right? That's accepting the risk. You're going to accept the risk for half of the trip and get the gas on the way back. You don't reduce the risk to zero, because most risk cannot be reduced to zero. You mitigate it, you evaluate it, understand it, and you reduce as much of it as possible. And what cannot be reduced, you accept. You can never completely outsource risk. Not completely, right? Imagine, for instance, that you decide, I'm going to Uber instead of driving my own vehicle. That's fine. But those questions still exist. Does the Uber guy have enough gas in his car? Is he doing regular maintenance? Like, the questions don't go away. Someone else is responsible for them, but you can't just get super comfy because you didn't ask the questions. You might need to know, is this guy doing what is needed? Because that could be a problem for you. And you've added risk because you're getting in someone else's car. Are they legit? That's a new risk that you have to add to. So just want you to understand, risk doesn't get resolved to zero. Most times it simply gets mitigated to a place where you're comfortable with what risk remains, and you cannot outsource risk fully. You can never outsource the responsibility for that risk. It's always yours. So what we're looking for is the opportunity for TXNL, Better Me Inc., and all of the companies that are under that umbrella to provide value for everyone that considers themselves a part of this network, and everyone who's willing to take that next step, whatever that step is for you. We're here to help you. We're here to work with you. The work will be mutually beneficial, because that's how things are. I mean, that's been our motto and our mantra. We are here to help each other. Right? Exploitation is not something we do here. In fact, it's not even not something we do. It's something that we are diametrically opposed to. So we're here to help you. We're here to help you help us. And there's a lot to do. I know everybody's got a diverse set of skills that cover a lot of ground. There's an opportunity for us to think bigger than we have as we close out 2021, and to take advantage of the societal and economic changes that we see on the planet, and leverage them in a way that's intelligent for us. Okay. So I hope that this has been helpful, that we've covered business risk, cybersecurity risk, personal risk, leadership goals, and what these can mean for you and for us moving forward. If you guys have any questions, if you have anything that you want to, anything you want to be more elaborated on, etc., let's go.